The silence before the storm, approx. 770 words. The deep space patrol of the Rulvok Empire moved slowly across the edge of Sector Delta 12. Captain Trill sat inside his command deck, watching the stars blink on the monitor. Everything seemed quiet. The Rulvok Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 100 years, and no one had dared to challenge them, especially not the humans, who hadn't been seen in this sector for over 2 decades. Just then, the long-range scanner blinked. A signal had appeared. Unidentified. No name. No code. Just silence. Another ghost signal. Asked his second officer, a tall being named Locke. Trill frowned. No. This one is different. It's moving. As the signal drew closer, the fleet's sensors began to buzz strangely. Static bled into the communication channels. Lights flickered. On and off for a second. Something wasn't right. It's not broadcasting any identification, said Locke. No markings. No color. Just a black. Trill leaned closer to the screen. A dark ship had emerged from the edge of their space, gliding silently with no visible weapons or engines burning. Its design didn't match any known alien race. No visible windows. No standard armor plating. It looked more like a shadow floating in space, but the readings were clear. It was real. It was huge. And it was heading straight for the center of the Rulvok patrol. Should we hail it? Locke asked. Trill shook his head slowly. No. Prepare the fleet. This might be the first human ship we've seen in years. But it's alone, Locke said, unsure. 1 ship against 20. That's what scares me, Trill replied. Within minutes, the Rulvok fleet adjusted formation. Battleships moved forward. Fighters spread into wings. Shields went up. But the black ship didn't stop. It slowed. And then completely halted, just outside of missile range. Then, without warning, all systems in the fleet blinked red lights. Warnings. Static. Engines fluctuated. The central AI aboard their command ship gave one chilling update: signal breached. Systems compromised. And before anyone could react, the black ship opened fire, not with standard lasers. Not with plasma bolts. But with beams of blue-white energy that bent space around them. The first blast cut through a Rulvok dreadnought like paper. The second destroyed 2 cruisers in one shot. Trill's mouth went dry. Get us out of here, he shouted. But it was too late. In 4 minutes, 17 warships were reduced to burning wrecks. Only one word escaped Locke's mouth as they watched the devastation unfold: human. Asterisk whispers across the stars, approx. 770 words. The aftermath drifted in silence. Wreckage from the Rulvok fleet floated like broken bones in space. Fires flickered along shattered hulls. Emergency beacons blinked, desperate but unanswered. The black warship didn't move. It just hovered among the ruins, cold and still. From a hidden station deep in Rulvok-controlled space, Commander Ral watched the footage on a replay loop. His claws tapped against the armrest of his seat. 4 minutes. He whispered, almost in disbelief. 20 ships lost. Next to him, an intelligence officer spoke nervously. We traced the ship's origin. It warped in from deep neutral space, beyond the old Terran borders. Ral leaned forward. Are we saying this was human? No confirmation, the officer replied. But no known species uses that kind of energy weapon. Or moves like that. Ral stood and walked to the center of the room. Around him, holograms of the destroyed fleet played on repeat. The warship's attacks were precise, clean, and terrifying. Every shot landed. Every defense the Rulvok fleet activated had failed instantly. This wasn't just power, Ral muttered. This was a message. The room fell silent. No one argued. On the other side of the galaxy, at a Terran border post, a young officer named Mia looked at the classified alert that had just come in. She frowned. Command just got hit with a surveillance request, she said to her superior. From the Rulvok Council. The older officer, Gray, raised an eyebrow. Really? First time in 15 years? Mia nodded. They want to know if a human warship crossed into Sector Delta 12. We haven't had anything deployed there in ages. At least, not officially. Gray sighed and leaned back in his chair. If it was one of ours, they are not going to like the answer. Do we tell them? No. We don't even know what they saw. MIA hesitated. And what if it was ours? Gray stood and walked over to the window. Outside, a line of Terran ships was being refitted, painted in deep obsidian. Armor identical to the one in the video. We've been quiet for a long time, he said. But quiet doesn't mean weak. Meanwhile, back at the Rulvok homeworld, panic had taken hold. Emergency meetings were called. Commanders shouted across long tables. Strategists tried to explain what happened, but no one had clear answers. No warning, no known technology, no survivors, just one silent, black ship and a 4-minute massacre. We need to retaliate, one leader barked. Strike their colonies. Show them we are not afraid. But Rel raised a hand. And what? If this wasn't a threat but a warning? The room quieted. Rel continued, think. Why just one ship? Why didn't it follow up? Why didn't it destroy everything? He pulled up a final image on the holo display, one of the wreckage. Among the drifting debris was a single piece of metal, still intact. It bore a single word, etched deep into its surface with burning heat. Remember, they are telling us something, Rel said, eyes narrowing. We forgot what humanity really is. Now they've reminded us. Asterisk a name from the shadows, approx. 770 words, the word remember burned into metal like a ghost from the past. To some, it was just a warning. But to Commander Rel, it was a sign that the humans hadn't forgotten what the Rulvok Empire once did. Years ago, during the border conflicts, the Rulvok attacked several Terran outposts. Most were civilian research stations, unarmed and unprepared. They had been erased quietly and quickly, and the galaxy had moved on because Earth didn't respond. No fleet. No message. No retaliation. At the time, many thought the humans were done. Finished. Hiding in their system. Weak, but now, one warship had returned. And it didn't speak. It acted. Rel opened a hidden archive, something only the highest commanders could access. Inside it was a single file labeled, Project Blackstar.it was a report from long ago, short and vague. It spoke of a classified human ship seen briefly by a pirate fleet before they vanished. The report had been buried, ignored as myth. But the description matched the current wreckage perfectly. No lights. No signals. Just darkness and death. A ghost. Rel leaned back in his chair, suddenly aware of how little they truly knew about humanity. Meanwhile, deep in space, a man named Dane stood alone on the bridge of the mysterious warship. He wore a black uniform with no insignia. No rank. No flag. He stared quietly at the drifting pieces of metal still floating from the last attack. His ship, called Wraith, didn't hum or shake like most vessels. It floated in total silence, as if it were part of space itself. Targets neutralized, the ship's AI said softly. Dane didn't respond. He walked to a control panel, pulled up a holo map, and marked the Rulvok fleet as it cleared. A second voice came from behind. They'll come looking for answers. It was a woman in dark combat armor. She didn't smile. None of them ever did. Everyone on board Wraith had been chosen for one reason. They were ghosts of Earth's forgotten war. They won't find any, Dane replied. They didn't want the truth when we begged for peace. Now they get silence. The woman nodded. What's the next target? Dane looked at the map. Dozens of red marks flashed, each one a site where humans had been attacked in the past. Without warning or justice, Command said wait. She reminded him, we waited long enough, Dane said quietly. We gave them years. Now we show them. Back at Rulvok High Command, Rel's warning was being ignored. We must strike first, one admiral shouted. Wipe out their nearest colonies before they bring more of these ghost ships. They already did, Rel said calmly. You just didn't see them. How do you think a single ship got through 20 defense satellites, sensor grids, and signal jammers without detection? The room fell silent. Rel walked to the center and placed a new file on the holo table. It showed recordings from older colonies, data blackouts, strange disappearances, sensor malfunctions. No explosions. No battles. Just a nothing look. At the pattern. They've been here for months. Maybe years. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. Another general growled, then we should launch everything we have. Against what? Ral asked. We don't know where they are. We don't know how many exist. That ship was a prototype 2 decades ago. What if they built 10? What if they built 50? The fear in the room was now clear. Not just fear of ships, but of the unknown. Then what do we do? Someone finally asked. Ral stared at the image of the burning word etched into the wreckage. Remember, we remember, he said coldly. We remember what we did. And we pray they don't remember it all. Asterisk. They had time to apologize. Approx. 770 words. The Rulevok Council met in secret now. Their public messages were still strong, full of fire and defiance, but behind closed doors, panic had taken hold. For every admiral calling for war, there were 5 who quietly moved their families off-world. They had underestimated the humans. Again, Ambassador Krent stepped into the council chamber, tired and worn. He had been part of the old Terran talks, back when peace was still possible. Back when Earth had sent envoys to ask for fair trade, for shared technology, for safety in the stars. Back then, the Rulevok response had been silence and secret. Attacks. Now, one Terran warship had reminded the galaxy that silence works both ways. I warned you years ago, Krent said, standing before the High Council. They offered peace. We gave them reasons to vanish. And now, they've returned. With silence sharper than any blade. Councillor Revik growled, if they want peace now, they must send a representative. They won't, Kren replied. You murdered the last one. The chamber fell quiet. No one met his eyes. Aboard the Wraith, Dane watched a new data feed flash across the console. A Rulevok carrier group had moved into orbit around a neutral colony near the edge of human space. It wasn't an attack yet, but it was a message. Dane stared at it for a long time. Do we engage? Asked the woman in armor. No, Dane replied. We let them sweat. He stood up slowly and walked to the center of the bridge, where a round display hovered just above the floor. Inside it, small holograms showed colony destruction logs, names of missing human scientists, trade convoys destroyed without reason. Each file had one thing in common, the Rulevok seal. They had time, Dane said quietly. We sent messages. We asked for answers. All we got back was silence. The woman crossed her arms. And now? Now we send our own silence. In a hidden communication hub deep inside neutral space, an anonymous message was broadcast across the galactic network. It was short. No name. No source. Just a voice, flat, human, and calm. You had years to speak. You had chances to make it right. Instead, you built fleets. Now, you face the silence you taught us. The message ended, replaced by the image of a black ship hovering over a battlefield filled with broken wreckage. The galactic net erupted in fear. Dozens of smaller races, those who once sided with the Rulevok, started pulling their forces back. Trade convoys rerouted. Defense posts lit up their shields. No one wanted to be the next target. Even the Empire's outer colonies began to tremble. The fear wasn't just from destruction, it was from not knowing where the Wraith would appear. Next, back at Rulevok Command, Commander Ral stood alone in his office, staring at old pictures of human diplomats standing with Rulevok ambassadors. It had once looked promising. A future where Earth and Rulevok built peace together. Now, that future was ash. His door opened. A junior officer stepped in, pale. Commander, the black ship has been sighted again. Sector Varnes, 8. Another fleet, gone. 3 minutes this time. Ral closed his eyes. 3 minutes, they were getting faster. What was buried won't stay buried. Approx. 770 words. Smoke drifted across the broken moons of Varnes, 8. Fragments of Rulevok warships floated silently in orbit, glowing with faint fires. Debris fields stretched for kilometers. The local mining colony, untouched but shaken, watched from below with terrified eyes. There had been no warning. The Wraith had arrived like a shadow and vanished just as fast. No communication. No demands. Just one burst of firepower and then silence. Back on the black ship, Dane reviewed the attack footage. His face showed no pride. No anger. Only focus. They never responded, said the woman in armor beside him. Not even an emergency signal. They froze. They remembered, Dane said softly. They just won't admit it. In the Rulvok Empire's central data vault, a historian named Laro uncovered a restricted file. It had been hidden under layers of military encryption. Only by accident had he found it, disguised inside an old transport schedule. The title read, Project Ember, Human Containment Protocol. Laro opened it and felt his breath catch. It was a record from 20 years ago. Rulvok High Command had ordered the quiet extermination of 5 human colonies along the old trade routes. No declaration of war. No public message. Just a cold, quiet purge meant to weaken Earth's expansion silently, and Earth never responded, until now. Laro backed away from the screen. His hands trembled. He rushed to deliver the file to Commander Ral. Ral scanned through the report, his face growing pale. They buried this, he muttered. They thought silence meant victory. Laro asked in a hushed voice, what do we do? Ral looked at him. We find someone who can speak for Earth, before they stop listening forever. In deep space, aboard the Wraith, Dane received a transmission, unmarked. Ancient encryption. Human-level code. He opened it. A familiar voice came through, a voice from Earth's past. An old commander from the Silent War, stand down. Return home. Let diplomacy speak. Dane didn't move. They've buried the truth for too long. You've made your point, the voice said. We need to talk. Before they panic and make it worse. Dane closed the message, weapon status. He asked the AI charged. Ready. All systems optimal. He looked at the woman beside him. We'll wait. Back at the Rulvok capital, Ral addressed the council for the final time. We committed the first crime, he said clearly. We hunted them without warning. And now, the ghosts have come. Some councillors shouted. Some demanded proof. Some still denied everything, but the images spoke louder than words, burned fleets, crushed colonies, and one silent ship leaving behind a single word each time. Remember, Ral stood tall. You can deny it all you want. But what we buried is now flying through space, armed, angry, and silent. And with that, Ral walked out. In a distant system, the Wraith floated in orbit above a forgotten human colony site, the first one destroyed during the old purge. Now, it was only glass and ash. Dane stood on the observation deck. This is where it began, he said, and where it will end, the woman asked. No, Dane replied. This is just the middle. Asterisk. One final offer, approx. 770 words. Commander Ral stood on a lonely landing pad at Outpost Theta, far from the noise of the Rulvok capital. The sky above was cold and grey, the air silent. A single message had been sent to the humans, using ancient diplomatic codes that hadn't been touched in 2 decades. Ral knew it might not work, but he had to try. From the horizon, a shape emerged, sleek, silent, black as space. The Wraith didn't roar or burn like other ships. It simply appeared. Like a shadow slipping into place. The platform trembled slightly as it landed. A ramp hissed open. 2 figures walked down. 1 was a tall human male, face unreadable, dressed in black with no markings. The other was a woman, armored but calm, eyes scanning every corner. Ral took a deep breath and stepped forward. I'm Commander Ral, he said. The man gave a slight nod. Dane. No title. No rank, just the name of a man who had erased fleets in minutes. I asked to speak, Ral continued. Because I believe there's still a path to peace. Dane said nothing. Ral pressed on. We found the old files. The buried attacks. The silence from our side. I know what we did. It was a crime. And now the stars remember it. The woman beside Dane gave a short nod, approval. Perhaps we offered peace once, Dane said quietly. No one answered. Ral replied, I know. That's why I'm here now. We can't erase the past, but maybe we can build something new. Dane looked out toward the horizon, where the ruins of a forgotten Terran colony lay beneath the dust. Wind blew through the bones of broken buildings. I lost family here, Dane said softly. A lot of us did. Ral lowered his head. Then we begin with truth. I will take this to the council. But I can't promise they'll accept. You don't need to, Dane replied. This isn't about your council anymore. Rel looked up, confused. Dane turned fully to him. This is about whether Earth still believes the galaxy is worth saving. Back on the Wraith, the crew watched as Dane returned silently. He removed his gloves, sat in the command chair, and stared at the stars. They are scared, the woman said. Some want peace. Others still want war. Dane didn't move. They always wait until they lose something important. Then they talk about peace. What now? We give them one final offer. He tapped a console. A message began recording. Across the galaxy, a new transmission spread like wildfire. The voice was calm. Human. Firm. To the Rulvok Empire and any who remember Earth, we came in peace. You buried us. You erased our names, our colonies, our people. For 20 years, we stayed silent. Now we speak with the only voice you seem to understand. But even now, after fleets fall and stars burn, we offer peace. One meeting. One chance. One promise: if you come in lies again, the next war will not last 4 minutes. It will not be seen. It will only be remembered. The message ended. No signature. No location, just the haunting silence of a warship that had never needed to shout. On the Rulvok capital, the council stood frozen. The silence in the room was heavier than before. One counselor whispered, "They are giving us a chance." Ral nodded slowly. The last one. Asterisk, the final choice, approx. 770 words. The Rulvok council chamber had never been this quiet. No shouting. No bickering. Just the weight of a single message hanging in the air, repeated again and again across every screen in the galaxy. One meeting. One chance. The next war will not last 4 minutes. It will not be seen. It will only be remembered. The councillors exchanged nervous glances. The images of destroyed fleets, the silence of their best admirals, and the unbroken calm of that human voice had pierced through their pride. Commander Ral stepped forward. We started this. We erased them when they came peacefully. They return not as conquerors, but as ghosts. And if this meeting fails, asked Councillor Drex. Ral's face was firm. Then we vanish. For across the stars, on the bridge of the Wraith, Dane stood still as the AI confirmed, message received. Rulvok Council requests a neutral site for meeting. Suggestion: Station V9, abandoned relay hub. Send coordinates, Dane replied. The woman beside him asked, "You trust them?" No. Dane said. But I trust that they are afraid. 3 days later, at the edge of neutral space, Station V9 came alive for the first time in decades. Dane and his team arrived silently. They didn't wear medals. They brought no guards. Just themselves and the weight of their message. On the other side of the meeting table stood 3 Rulvok representatives, including Commander Ral. Dane didn't sit. You've read the files, he began. You've seen the wreckage. Now, hear the truth. He placed a small cube on the table. It glowed softly, then projected images of the 5 destroyed human colonies, of children running before explosions, of diplomats dying in silence while waving white flags. We begged for peace, Dane said. You buried our names. We asked again. You silenced our envoys. Then we stopped asking. Ral didn't interrupt. He let the pain sit in the air. Dane continued, we built Wraith not for war, but as a memory. A warning in steel and silence. For 20 years, we waited. We watched. And when you came again with fleets, we remembered. Ral nodded slowly. And now? Dane's voice was calm. Now, you speak clearly. Or vanish silently. The meeting lasted 3 hours. When it ended, no media covered it. No galactic leaders were told, but one agreement was made: truth would be released, the Rulvok Council would declassify the attacks. They would acknowledge Earth's pain. And in return, Earth would hold back its ghost fleet. 2 weeks later, across the stars, truth poured like rain. Newscasts on every world showed the images Earth had held for years: burned colonies, lost names, war crimes erased by time. And through it all, one message repeated, always ending the same way, remember. In the days that followed, embassies reopened. Trade talks resumed. And somewhere deep in the cold between systems, the Wraith drifted once more into silence. On the bridge, Dane stood alone, watching as the stars passed by. The woman approached from behind. They signed it. I saw, he said, no victory parade. Dane gave a small smile. This was never about victory. She nodded. And if they forget again? Dane looked at the stars. Then we remind them. The ship continued its quiet path through space, unseen, unheard, but always ready, because the galaxy had learned one thing: you can silence a voice. But not a memory. And never a ghost. Asterisk.